Hey, how are you doing, everybody? Welcome back to the series on Sass. Now, if you missed the last two videos in which I go over why we need Sass, how to install Sass, difference between the .sass and .scss extensions, taking a look at Sass variables and nesting with Sass, you can check out this link over here, the pop-up over here, and if you have someone from the future, you can just get the whole playlist of the whole series from there. But in this video, we will taking a look at mixins. The best way to describe mixins is like a big brother of variables in Sass. We'll be looking into implementation and understanding more about mixins in the further part. But before we get into mixins, I want to discuss about a CSS naming methodology known as BEM. BEM is an acronym for block element modifier, and it's a way of declaring your classes in this particular format. And the block, which is nothing but which can be a component which is individual, so something like a footer or something like a project or something like a card, and the element is an element inside of the block, so it can be like the project heading or the project image or the project text or the project button, something like that. And modifiers are basically modification done to the element which you have already done. Say for example, my project has two buttons. One button is the normal generic button, while second has a neon effect on it. It's completely same to the earlier button, just that the colors and the shadows are a little changed. And well, it's not worth it naming completely different, like project neon button. All you have to do is project button and modification neon into it. And why is BEM important is we spend a lot of time scrolling through our CSS trying to remember what have we named that button over there under the card. Is it button alt? Is it button card? Is it button something? So BEM just adds like a more structure to your naming methodology, and it also incorporates with Sass. That's why I'm including it in this video before we get into understanding mixins, because you generally would want to write your Sass in the BEM convention, having your block at the top level and nesting the elements inside of the block, and then nesting modifiers inside of the element, which makes the whole process a lot more readable. So with that being said, let's jump into VS Code and try to understand BEM first, and then with the same example, let's get into mixins too. Alright, so here we are on our VS Code terminal. I already have Sass running with a watch flag, so it's going to update my CSS file as we do changes over here. But as you can see, we already have 4 classes already defined for us in our .scss file, and they are in the BEM convention, but they are not defined in a Sass kind of a way. And I'm saying that because we have heading header, and for example, if I wanted to add like a heading button inside of it, then I have to declare another class over here called as heading button, which doesn't really feel Sass like, because now you're writing 2 instances for different element inside of the same block. So in Sass, I would really recommend you guys to have something like this. It's something in this format, and it's going to render out the same for your CSS. It's going to be like it's still going to be heading, header, and text shadow inside of it. But we can also add like now like a button, which will be having say like font size of 2 rem. See, now for the CSS, it's still the same kind, the same declaration as I was talking about before, but it's so much cleaner in your .scss file. Let's get rid of this button, and also let me just convert this all the other 3 classes into Sass-like feature with the magic of editing in a second. Alright, so here we have the Sass file now transformed into very Sass-like feature. And also, say for example, now let's talk about modifiers also. If you wanted to add like a modifier, now all you have to do is just add another ampersand over here, and then just go I don't know, header neon now, and then I can just add my style over here to have the color change to be green, whatever, the teal color. And now you might be questioning, hey, but aren't we just writing more lines of code? As I just showed before, adding like styles for different elements inside of the same block becomes a lot more easier. So right now it's just header. So if I again just added like a button, a text, and an image and everything for the header, or like for the form, it will be a lot more structured and it gives you predictability. When you power Sass with BEM, it gets a power up basically, because your naming or your markup in the BEM convention, writing your Sass can be just as easy as like, okay, I'm gonna write styles for my header now, so all I have to do is just write header, and then I want to write for my headers text, the main text, and I just want to have like say I'm running like 2 themes on my website. I have a themeable option and a light theme and a dark theme. So I can just add a modifier of light and dark, which will be changing as I need. So I hope you understand why BEM is supremely powerful. And with that being said, now let's jump into understanding the use of Mixins. So before we get into implementation of Mixins, let me just emphasize on why we really need Mixins. And for that, let's go back to what are Sass variables. Now, variables are used to store values, and it's supremely helpful if you're having the same value repeated over and over again. But what if you have the same property value pair being repeated multiple times in your code? At that point, the saving of value doesn't really make sense, because now you are writing your value n number of times because the property is being repeated n number of times. And that's where Mixin comes in. Mixins allows you to store property value pairs inside of it like a variable, and just plug it in different styles when and if you want them. And that's also why it's called like a big brother of variable, because you're not only storing values now, you're storing literal property with the values and then just plugging it in wherever you want it. So with that basic concept of Mixins out of the way, let's get into implementation of Mixins. Now you probably have already realized that all our styling has is text shadow being repeated 4 times, and out of that 3 are identical to each other. And this is the ideal use case for using a Mixin. So let's get into understanding how to declare a Mixin first. The syntax of Mixin is pretty simple. All you have to do is declare at Mixin, give it a name, so I'm going to give it a text shadow, and then just write your CSS code property value pair inside of it. And that's it. This is your Mixin. Now to include a Mixin into your code, all you have to do, let me just do it for all the files at once. So all you have to do to include your Mixins inside of your class or style of your class is to tell Sass to include that Sass inside of your class. So pun intended. All you have to do is type at include, and you have to say the Sass name, which is text shadow, and let's give it a semicolon so it doesn't bug out afterwards. And well, that's it. But as you can see, we still have a text shadow being repeated twice, but it's not completely the same because you're having a different color. But it is also not worth to create another Mixin just because we have a different color. And that's where another feature of Mixin kicks in, that is the ability to add arguments inside of your Mixins. And what that allows you to do is you will be passing a value into your Mixin, which will be replacing that said argument with the value. Something similar to do what happens with a function in, say, JavaScript or Python or something like that. So to add arguments to your Mixins, all you have to do is add a parenthesis, opening and closing parenthesis after the name, and then declare an argument. And declaring argument is pretty similar to how you declare a variable. You do $sign and give the argument a name. So I'm going to give it the name of color because we have the color as an argument, and just replace the value with that. So I'm just going to put that over here, and now I'm going to pass the values over here to all our pre-existing Mixins included. Again, the CSS code does not change a bit, but now what you can do is you can just take this and you can just tell it to include the text shadow and pass a value of white. And now you're using a single Mixin, a single key value pair to add text shadow to all of your style. And let's take it up a notch, because still you're declaring the same, you're passing the same argument value 3 times, and you don't really want to write this 3 times. So what you can do is now you can give a default value to your argument, so that if I don't pass any values, it's gonna just take that default value as a given value, and it's gonna render, it's gonna create that style with that default value. And to add a default value is again as simple as just putting it over here like this, and then you just remove, and we can just remove this from everywhere because it doesn't really matter now. And you can take it even up a notch and make it even more maintainable by using variables. So now if I declare a variable to have like a text, like a shadow default color, and I give it the value of the teal, and I replace this color with shadow or let me just copy it and just paste it. Now if I ever wanted to change, say, my default shadow color everywhere, I just need to change it over here, and it's going to also work for my text shadows to have that same color, and I don't have to do changes in like two or three different places. And there is virtually no limit to how many arguments you can have, so we can even add like another argument such as size, which will be having a default value of 0.55 rem, and we just replace the 0.55 rems with our size. And well, that's it. You have created a single mixin to style all of your text shadows, and it's completely optimizable. But if you don't pass any values, it's still gonna work with the default values. So you have created a solid mixins, which is also highly maintainable. And you know what? Let's just create another variable which is gonna store the size. I'm just gonna take this and I'm gonna name it as shadow default size. I'm gonna give it a value of 0.55 rem, 0.55 rem. And then just take this value and pass it as the default value. And well, this is supremely maintainable now, because you don't have to say, if you wanted to change the size for each and every text shadow, you have to just change the value over here. If you wanted to change it just for like the form heading, you just have to come over here and just tell it to have like the size to be like 0.5 rem, and that's it. You have changed the size. So I hope you get a feel for how powerful mixins can be in the long run. And it's also not that you have to have like a single property value pair. You can have as many property value pairs as you want. You can have like a whole section, but if you see the code again, we have a little bit of redundancy over here happening too. So in the next video, we will be looking to reduce the redundancy of repeated declarations by use of the extend. But for this video, I hope you understood how mixins really work. To just wrap up, we just covered what is BEM, why is BEM important, how powerful does Sass get with the use of BEM, what are mixins, how you can create a supremely optimized mixins, a supremely versatile mixin, and well, implementation of it. So I hope you guys gained something from this. If you did, drop me one of these, subscribe if you haven't already. We are very close to 50 subs, which is kind of surprising in such small period of time because I wasn't so consistent. So I really want to thank everybody who comes and watches this video, drops me a like, subscribes to my channel, and comments down below too. There'll be links to the playlist and the link to the last video in the description, along with my social media if you want to connect to me on my social media. So see you there. And with that being said, I have to see you guys in the next video. Till that time, stay fit, stay awesome, and bye bye.